go on to say a few things about how I think socialists or Marxists should approach religion in the world today, and what we should say about it, what we should do about it, and So that's the kind of thread that I'm taking. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of philosophical background first. Marx was a member of the Young Hegelians club, so he studied Hegel with Engels and was quite influenced by Hegel's philosophy, but also had a lot of criticisms of it. And likewise, he was a sort of contemporary of Ludwig Feuerbach, who was Hegel's student, and he wrote about that a bit as well. So I'm not going to talk about Hegel that much. There's so much you could say, but the thing that's relevant for my talk now is that Hegel wrote about the way our perception shapes the world around us. So the way that we think and the way that we feel can shape what we experience. Whereas Marx and Engels wrote about how the material world can shape our perception of reality. So what we do in our daily lives and what we experience and the systems around us and economic factors and all of that affects how we think about reality. So I'm going to talk about that a bit more later. That's why I raised it. And the other thing is that Hegel talked about, and sort of Hegelian philosophers talked about alienation from religion. So people feeling like lost or, like kind of at sea, or a sense of dissatisfaction because they had moved away from religion. Whereas Marx and Engels talked about people feeling alienation because they are removed from their labor in a broad sense. So they're removed from, our human effort often doesn't go towards things that then that we then benefit from, or that make us happy, or that we experience. So that they kind of had a materialist critique of Hegel. Feuerbach, who was Hegel's student, but moved on from Hegel as well, and added his own thoughts, said he kind of moved away from the sort of deism or pantheism of Hegel towards a more materialist and rational explanations for the human condition. He wrote a book called The Essence of Christianity, in which he talks about the consciousness of God being the consciousness of man, so that we unconsciously project ourselves onto God, which is an idea called projectionism. So Marx and Hegel drew on Feuerbach, but they also critiqued his writing and went, I think, further in their materialist analysis, arguing that that human consciousness is not separable from social relations and social conditions, and that religion is, at least in part, a product of social relations and conditions. So it's not just that we are projecting ourselves onto this God, it's that this God is also created by our social conditions and relations. So the world is created by the world around us as well. And therefore, a change in social conditions could actually decrease, maybe increase, depending on the nature of the change, religiosity among people and the nature of religion as well. And then there's the final sentence in Marx's thesis on Feuerbach says, philosophers have only interpreted the world, the point is to change it. And I think, like the Opium of the People, this is quite a misused quote, because within the context of this, of what he's writing about, what I think it means is that change will or can challenge what we see as the human condition. So we shouldn't have like fixed ideas about what our lives can be like and how we will feel and what we will believe, because all of that can change. Okay. In terms of the Opium of the People, so this is this quote is from Marx's work, The Critique of Hegel's Philosophy of the Right. And I'm going to kind of pull out a few things that he wrote about and what I think they mean. So first of all, pretty straightforwardly, I think he says, man makes religion, religion does not make man. So I think that's quite clearly echoing Feuerbach talking about us projecting onto God. But then he goes beyond that and says, man is no abstract being squatting outside the world. So again, emphasizing the kind of importance of social relations in our belief systems. He adds, religion is an inverted consciousness of the world. The fight against religion, or the struggle against religion, is also the struggle against the world. So what he means here, I think, is that if we struggle against religion, then we are struggling against the social structures such as capitalism that can oppress or exploit us. So he's very clear about religion being at least in part a product of social relations. Okay, so the analogy that I would use here, and I kind of came up with this after eating a very large lunch, was if this world in its current form is like indigestion, then religion is like a belch or a burp. It's not the cause of the social relations, I don't think, according to Marx's writings, but it's more like a symptom of it. Religious suffering is at one and at the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against suffering. This is the most famous passage. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. And you could kind of read that and think, oh, okay, so actually Marx is saying, that religion gives us heart, religion gives us soul. It could be a sort of positive thing in a horrible world. But actually, if you really read it again, he's saying it's a sigh. So it's not a life-saving medicine. It's not actually really of any use. It's a symptom of a condition. Secondly, he says this world is heartless. So the heart that he's talking about as religion isn't really there. It's a sort of illusion. And thirdly, similarly, the world is soulless. So the soul is also therefore maybe an illusion. And so I think actually he's quite scathing about religion, but he analyzes religion in a sort of in a economic, political, social way, and it's not about condemning religious people as such. He is analysing the religion as at least in part, a product of social relations and the world that we live in currently. Okay, so the final thing I want to talk about a little bit is a kind of Marxist or socialist approach to religion. And there's 3 points that I want to pick out here. So I'm going to explain each one. So the first one is freedom of thought and worship. So I don't think that this is picked up on enough, that actually any good socialist should be for people having the right to believe and practice the religion that if they want to. But then there's quite a big caveat that comes with that, which is that should be in the private realm. So socialists should be secularists, because we should also be free from religion if we want to be. And religion shouldn't come into the state or democracy. Freedom from religion is really important, I think, for a whole bunch of reasons. And I think there should be no involvement in the state from religion. So there shouldn't be, bishops in the House of Lords, for example. No special privileges for religion. No tax breaks. No charity status. No state funding. There should not be religious state schools. There shouldn't be any religious schools, actually, because proselytization in education should be separate for me. But all of this also needs to be considered with regards to the rights of religious and ethnic minorities. And I think that can be a bit tricky. And the final thing I want to say about secularism, and I think this isn't really emphasized enough, is that a key demand, I think, for socialists, not just because it empowers the working class and is good for people and makes people's lives better, but for other reasons as well, we need to demand a better state benefit system so that people who might be rejected from their family or community because of their lack of religion, or because they are queer, or because they are a woman that doesn't want to get married, or whatever it might be, those people are having to fight two fights, one against their own family or community for their own dignity and against shame culture. And secondly, they might be in a situation where they are economically dependent on people. And that's really important, I think, that a key demand is really to have a very, very comprehensive state benefit system in order for people to be free from religion, or free to practice religion in the way they choose. My final point is that socialists should be rational and rationalists, and should defend science and the scientific method, and the fact that actually not all systems of knowledge are created equal. And the scientific method is a robust way of testing the world around us and discovering the world around us. And you can't get the same from horoscopes. You can't get the same from, conspiracy theories. You can't get the same from established religion either. And I think that's it's obviously clearly of massive importance at the moment, with people setting fire to like 5G towers and stuff like that. It's important that people understand this as well, that we have a better level of science education in schools. But yeah, I think that we have to be very clearly rationalist and defenders of a materialist understanding of the world, and of the scientific method as the way to discover the natural world.